Good morning, everyone. This morning I'm going to do a Bible study on Hagar in the wilderness. And the first mention of Hagar in the Bible can be found in Genesis 16. But prior to that, there's no mention of her origin or background, probably her ancestor. There's no mention. But I think when we go back to Genesis 12:15 to 16, it probably give us some context on her background. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into the palace. And this year they're referring to Sarah because there was a famine, and Sarah and Abraham left their home and they went to Egypt due to the famine. He treated Abraham well for her sake, and Abraham acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, menservant and maidservant, and camel. So based on that, because when we go further into Genesis 16, I think it mentioned that Hagar was from Egypt. So based on Pharaoh giving Abraham manservant and maidservant, we can probably come to the conclusion that Hagar was given to Sarah and Abraham from Pharaoh. No, Sarah's Abraham's wife had bore him no children. And we're reading Genesis 16 and starting from verse 1. But she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abraham, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her. So based on this, we seen that Sarah is taking matters into her own, and because if you go back to Genesis, God already had made a promise to Abraham. He didn't specify when originally they would have a child. So we can see here Sarah, she got impatient and she cannot wait any longer. So now she decided to take matters into her own hand. She's deciding she want to help God, and God doesn't need her help, because in Hosea it said, though the vision tarry, wait for it shall surely come to pass. And we know that God is the God of his word, because when in Genesis 21, when he made a promise to Sarah, he kept that promise. So whatever promises God made, his word is true, his word is bond. So God is not going to make a word and then he go back on his word. So it's just impatient got the best of Sarah, that she couldn't wait any longer on the Lord. And we know that Sarah is speaking on matters that she have like no knowledge, because when God spoke to Abraham concerning the promise, or concerning that covenant that he made with him, Sarah wasn't privy to that information. She was present. So now here she is speaking on behalf of God, basically. So she said, the Lord has restrained me from bearing. And basically, if you look, both Sarah and Abraham, they have no children. So she's speaking, she didn't say us, the Lord had prevented us, but the Lord has prevented me. So she's putting herself into the equation as she is a problem. So she came up with this splendid idea that, okay, we have a maidservant. I'm going to give her to you so she can be your concubine. And we know from in the beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, it was just Adam and Eve. He didn't make no additional partner for Adam, but he joined one person to the other. So she said to Abraham, go sleep with my maidservant. I can build a family through her. So we can see Sarah's mindset. She's not even thinking about probably one child. She's like building a family. So now basically she's like turning Hagar into like her surrogate, or her mommy machine, because she now going to be bearing all her children. And the funny thing, like when she said that to Abraham probably didn't find it strange, but he heed to Sarah, and he agree with her plan, and he become a accomplice into Sarah's plan. So we can see that when desperation kicked in, like sometimes we do things that we wouldn't normally do, and we're no different from Sarah, because sometimes when things happen, circumstances that we cannot understand, we try to help God, but we need to just learn to be patient. As I think in Isaiah 40 it said, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, they shall mount up with wings and eagle. And though things may not seem like it's going to happen, God timeline is different from our timeline. As the writer said, his thoughts are not our thoughts, neither is his way our ways. So God at a specific time, and God will do things according to the time that he has ordained. So basically, we see when Sarah take matters into her own and are speaking on behalf of matters she don't know, it's like deja vu all over again with Genesis 3, when Eve, she was speaking to the serpent on stuff that she have no knowledge about, or probably Adam shared some information with her, but she was privy to the entire conversation of what God said to Adam. And we see the same thing with Sarah. She was privy to the conversation of what was discussed between Abraham and God. So Sarah basically identified herself as, I am the problem, for the barrenness is a result of me. And even before Hagar become pregnant, because although she's testing this method, she doesn't know if it's 100% gonna even work, but she's testing, or she's banking on this is gonna be her solution to her barrenness. Hagar is gonna be the solution for us having not child but children. So Hagar, being as she's a servant, she had no say into the matter. She's the servant, and normally as a servant you do whatever your master tell you to do. So Hagar, she's an innocent bystander, got caught up into both Sarah and Abraham's scheme. And when she became pregnant with Abraham's first child, we see that it stated that Hagar started to resent Sarah, and there could be a lot of reasons probably why she resented Sarah. It could be for the fact that Sarah put her in a marriage that initially she didn't want to be in, and then second, now she's pregnant with a child probably she didn't even want to have. So now it could be a matter of fact that Hagar could be saying, these are the reasons I resented you. Or it could be the fact that I was able to produce or give Abraham a child or conceive a child. That's something that you cannot do. And when Sarah see the change in Hagar's status, or see the change in Hagar's countenance, then Sarah didn't like the way that Hagar was start acting towards her. So Sarah decided to take matters into her own hand. And she said to Abraham, you are responsible for the wrong, and now that she knows she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. So Sarah, she came up with her plan. Now her plan backfire, and now she's blaming the husband that he is the cause. He is the reason why they're going through this predicament. So Sarah basically kicked Hagar out of the house, and Hagar, here she's running away. She is a stranger in a foreign land, and she have nowhere to go. They kicked her out, and she fled from Sarah, and she was in the desert. And while she was in the desert, in verse 7, it said, the angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was a spring that is beside the road to Shur. And we can see that although we can hide from God, or we think we're hiding from God, we can hide from man, but we cannot hide from God, because the darkness and the light are both alike unto God. Or we can do things in darkness, but eventually what is done in the darkness will eventually come to light. So God see all the injustice that was done to Hagar, and when the entire thing unfolded, God had compassion on Hagar. And so while she was in the desert, that the angel came and found her and said to her, "Why are you running away?" And Hagar responded, "I'm running away from my mistress." And then the angel said to go back. So imagine you are running away from a situation that is not in your favor, but no, the angel of the Lord is telling you to go back, because we are supposed to be submissive to our master, and that is what the angel was telling Hagar, to go back and be submissive to your master. But before she went back, the angel gave her a message that the Lord had given him. And in verse 9, the angel of the Lord said, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will so increase your descendant that they will be too numerous to count." So once Hagar heard those words, and it would be like a covenant or a promise God now made with Hagar, that she returned unto her mistress. Then Hagar went back, and then now we go back to Genesis 21, and she had given birth to Ishmael. But we see that Hagar can't get a break to save her life, because now Ishmael did something, and what he did, Sarah didn't like what he did, so he again kicked Hagar out. But this time, Abraham, in Genesis 21:14-19, early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulder, and they went her and sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. So again, here Hagar is running away. And when I was studying this yesterday, I find it very strange. If Abraham was presented with all this gift that Pharaoh gave him, like, why didn't he have one of his servants take Hagar to where she was going? Because based on what we read, she eventually ended back into Egypt. So why didn't he have one of his servants take her there? But instead, it seemed like he was cutting all ties with her. So he gave her bread and he gave her a bottle of water and sent her on her way. But while she was there, that she was there wandering in the desert, because back in those days you have no compasses. She probably didn't even know how she initially get from Egypt to where they're currently staying. So now Abraham sent her out, and she's there wandering in the wilderness because she doesn't know where to go. I know I'm guessing they ran out of food and they ran out of water. So Hagar, she was thinking that if we ran out of water, because you can survive without food, but you cannot survive without water. So when the water was all dispensed, she put her son to the side, because as a mom, it's very challenging for you to watch your child either die before you, and they're going through things, or stuff is happening that you have no control and you cannot do anything. So she probably feel overwhelmed. She probably feel probably a lot of emotion going through Hagar at this moment. She probably asking the question, why? What did I do wrong? Why am I back into this situation again? So because she didn't want to watch her son die, she put him to the side, and she stand afar off to watch to see what will eventually happen. And that kind of remind me of the story of Jonah when God sent him to Nineveh. When God sent Jonah to Nineveh, and in Jonah 4 verse 5, we see that Jonah, when he leave the city, he watched to see what would become the outcome of Nineveh. Will they perish? if they didn't turn from their way, or would God save them? And Jonah, he set aside, basically, as Hagar sat Ishmael aside to see what would be the outcome. But Hagar lifted up her voice, and when she wept, our merciful Father, he heard her cry, and he sent his angel to rescue her once again. The angel came, rescued Hagar, and also reminded her of the covenant that God had made with her when she ran away in Genesis 16. And 4 lessons that we can learn from Hagar are: God sees, God hears and sees us. Hagar was just a lonely maidservant. She was a stranger in a foreign land, just like when Israel went to Egypt, they were a stranger in a foreign land. And she was forced into a marriage probably that she didn't want to. She's forced to have a child that she probably didn't want to. And then after all this, she was treated harshly by Sarah and Abram, who put her into this predicament. So God saw her misery, he heard her cry, and he came to her rescue, just like we see also with Rachel and Leah. When Rachel was despised, God shut the womb of Rachel, and he opened the womb of Leah, because he see that she was despised by Jacob. The second, we can know that God is a provider. The Lord, in the Bible, it said, a cattle and 1,000 hill belong to the Lord. And David said, I have been young, and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. So God will always make a way for us. God loves his children, and he may mention that a sparrow, they're sold for like pennies, but God even take note of that. So imagine us as his children, going through circumstances, going through a situation that he's just gonna sit still and don't help us. No, he's a God of his word, and he's a God that will reach us and be there for us. God, and the third thing that we can learn is God still work even when we go off plan, because God had gave Abram a covenant. Abram went and he and his wife tried to help God, and though they diverted from the plan that God initially had ordained for them, God still didn't give up on them. He still find a way to restore back. He had a way to let that plan work for them. So we can see through Hagar's story that God is powerful and still find ways to love us, and even when we don't stick to his original plan. God does not waver in his faithfulness, even when Abram and Sarah waver in theirs. But God doesn't just ignore Hagar and Ishmael or treat them as an inconvenience to his plan, but in the midst of everything that happened that was not within Hagar's control, that he made a way for them. So God is a merciful, loving, and forgiving God. And as individual, we know that God sees, he hears our misery, provide for our desperate needs, and show love, grace, and mercy to us even when we're undeserving and probably be an outcast. And as Hagar find courage, hope, and strength in the Lord, we too, if we're faced with a situation, if we're faced with a circumstances, and if we probably divert from God's plan, we can get back and be back into what God wants us originally ordained for us, because God is a God of his word, and his word is precious to him, and he will always stay by what he said in his word. So whatever probably wilderness journey, if you feel like giving up, if you feel like you're an outcast, you might be an outcast to others, but you're not an outcast to God. You're not an outcast to Jesus. They love you with an unconditional love. I hope this message resonates with you to stay true, Hold on. And if you're going through your wilderness, knowing that it is just for a season, God will always come through. He's an on-time God. So help us to just, I hope that we'll be patient to wait on God. And even though sometimes we can be impatient and the waiting can seem forever, God will come on time because He's an on-time God. Stay blessed.